things generate our motivation. So in Tibetan, there's a word, namtok, which can be translated as conceptualizations, but another translation, which I prefer, is proliferations. So this is when our mind proliferates with all sorts of opinions, all sorts of ideas, all sorts of thoughts, and they make sense to the mind of ignorance, anger, and attachment, but they make absolutely no sense to a mind of wisdom and compassion. And yet, these are the thoughts that occupy our mind so much. What we ruminate about, what we worry about, what we're anxious about. And so these kinds of thoughts, which we have and all sentient beings have, not only cause us a lot of suffering, mental suffering, but they also consume a lot of time that could be used to direct our mind towards more realistic views of conventional life as well as the ultimate nature. So when we're in touch with how crazy our mind gets with these kinds of thoughts, then we can have compassion for other living beings whose minds get rather nutty with such thoughts, and realize that these people just want happiness and not suffering, just like us. So there's no good reason to be angry at them, to disown them, to classify them as toxic, or to be attached to them and cling to them. But simply to see miserable sentient beings in samsara and generate compassion, compassion being the mind that wants them to be free of all their dukkha. So with that kind of attitude, or that kind of vision, let's generate bodhicitta as our motivation for listening to some thoughts about the perfection of wisdom. I like that expression, namtok, proliferations. Yeah, because you get this idea of something just proliferating out of control. And it's quite interesting. Now, after the election, now everybody's proliferating. Yeah. Why did Trump win? What did Kamala do wrong? Why did the black men not support a black woman? Why this and who that? And what are the Democrats going to do now? And what's Trump going to do now? And there's all this proliferation about I don't know what. Everybody's fears, everybody's hopes, everybody's interpretations, everybody's psychoanalysis of the American public, you know? And we could be using our national time in a more useful way to really be of benefit to each other, yeah. So, so I'm just kind of marveling at that. Mm-hmm. And that's not to mention, so that's our national proliferation. Then we all have our own private proliferation, don't we? Yeah. About, those of us with the Buddha Hall, when's the Buddha Hall going to be done? How are we going to pay the next invoice? And they're washing the walls now, but there's still stuff on it. What are they going to do? Where? And why did we sign with this contractor to start with? And, no, we'll never go again with him. Why will we never go? This and this and this. And, oh, my God, what a waste of time. So, that's just sharing the proliferation. So some people, but, we think our proliferations are so interesting, because that's why we ruminate on them again and again and again, But I don't know, you guys didn't look so interested when I was talking about all the worries about the Buddha Hall, and when you talk about, your worries, everybody else will go, and yet to ourselves, it seems so important. Why? It's about me. Okay, me, I, my, and mine. And this real self there that I have to put forward and declare my identity and make sure other people accept me the way I am. And treat me the way I ought to be treated and not the way they're treating me. Right? Yeah? And of course the world doesn't cooperate, which just shows how stupid other people are. But of course we don't cooperate with all of their proliferations either. So this is why we're studying the perfection of wisdom. Okay, we want to go beyond this kind of thing. So when you notice your mind buzzing around with lots of proliferations and plans of the future, you might be, what is very interesting, when people do retreat, they spend most of their retreat time thinking of all the retreats they want to do in the future. Yeah. And all the teachings they want to study in the future. But of course, doing the retreat they're doing, they're too busy proliferating to do it. Mm-hmm. So, bring the mind back. Okay. Hooray, it made it to the favorites section. I don't have to search for it. Wow. I spent so much time worrying about how long it's going to take. Okay, what page are we on? I type in 10 and it goes to page 4. Okay. people who made PDFs. I could give them so many suggestions how to improve their PDF thing. Yeah. They could probably give me more suggestions on how to use it correctly. But I have no time for that. They should change. Yeah, they should. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going on. We finished the title. We're going to start the actual text. Okay. So I'm reading from a slightly different translation than the one we have, but I think you can pick up where we are. At that time as well, the noble Avalokitesvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, clearly beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom itself, and saw that even the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. Okay, nothing like getting to the point. Yeah. Okay, so the next figure we encounter in this sutra, after the Buddha, is the bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, or Chenrezig Kuan Yin in Chinese, Kannon in Japanese. Yeah, it's all the same one. Okay, so the term bodhisattva refers to a being who seeks Buddhahood through the systematic practice of the 6 paramitas, or 6 perfections. Okay, what are they? Generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. Okay. So a bodhisattva is one who practices those, but who postpones their own complete entry into nirvana until all other beings are liberated. There's different kinds of bodhisattvas. Some attain full awakening with other sentient beings. Some take before other sentient beings and lead them. But the ones who say, I will only attain awakening after others, yeah, that gives us really the feeling of how much they sacrifice, yeah, to stay in samsara, to guide us. But actually, they say that the ones who attain awakening first, yeah, are better, because once they've attained awakening, they have all the qualities and abilities, compassion and wisdom, to guide sentient beings most effectively. Yeah. Okay. It is said that bodhisattvas are beings who, out of intense compassion, mahakaruna, never shift their attention away from sentient beings. They are perpetually concerned with the welfare of all beings, and they dedicate themselves entirely to securing that welfare. Thus, the very name bodhisattva conveys the key qualities of an infinitely compassionate being. So, as ordinary beings, our focus of attention is ourselves, and what we have to do in training to be a bodhisattva is to exchange self and others, so that the focus of our attention, instead of is just me, I, my, and mine, it's the welfare of other living beings. And some people, when they hear that, they get frightened. Oh, but then what'll happen to me if I don't take care of myself? And you make sure I'm comfortable. I'll rot away, and bad things will happen to me. What's interesting is all of that fear causes suffering. Just the fear, doesn't it? When you worry about yourself like that, that is not a happy state of mind. Yeah. So that unhappiness is coming from our self-centered thought. that's focused only on me, I, my, and mine. So right there, we can see how being obsessed with ourselves and the welfare of this one sentient being who just happens to be me, how that obsession makes us miserable. When we are able to shift our attention to other living beings, it alleviates a lot of that pain of constantly seeing everything that occurs in the universe in relationship to ourselves. Because that constant attention on the self, interpreting everything about the self, everything that happens in the world about the self, it really causes us a lot of misery, okay? Somebody walks in the room, instead of us thinking, oh, there's one of my mother's sentient beings, I hope they're doing well today. We're looking, do they smile at me? Do they say hello to me? Oh, they didn't say hello to me. Uh-oh, what have I done wrong? What's with them that they don't say hello? They should be nicer to me. On and on and on, just because somebody didn't say good morning. Yeah? And it's all about me. If we focused on others, am I saying good morning to others? Am I greeting others with a pleasant face? Yeah? In other words, what is the effect of my actions on others? Can I contribute to their well-being? Then our whole mental state changes. Yeah? And we're removed from this incredible, thing about the self all the time. Yeah? Can you see at all in your own experience how the focus on the self sometimes just makes us miserable? Yeah? And then especially when we get into identity politics and, people, we all have identities now. And, as the world seeing Buddhists the way Buddhists should be seen, I have to stick up for Buddhists, or whatever my racial group is, whatever my ethnic group is. Not everybody knows what Oiveyasmir means. They don't understand me. Oiveyasmir. And, you go on and on about this. Yeah, and it just, what's the use? I hear about, universities, you have to have safe rooms now because, people get triggered by seeing very small things. And, the teachers just talking about, what's going on in another country, and people get triggered, and you have to have a safe room with counselors there who can hear your pain as you heard about the suffering of people in Gaza, and you are in so much pain, and you are so angry. Who's the focus on? Is it the suffering of the people in Gaza? No, it's our own suffering. That we don't like hearing about that. Okay? So, I think this is kind of realizing how not only the self-centeredness, but the way we've reified the self to be this incredibly concrete thing with so many identities. It really makes us so miserable, especially when you live in a society where other people also have all of their identities, and everybody's going around saying, why don't you pay attention to me? Instead of, why aren't I paying attention to others? Yeah?
When you say self-centeredness,
Oh, that's, yeah.
when you say self-centeredness, can we say self-grasping?
Self-centeredness and self-grasping are two different things. They're very good friends, okay? Self-centeredness is putting, my happiness is more important than others. My suffering hurts more. The constant focus on the self. The self-grasping is the mind that reifies the self and makes it into some concrete thing. Okay? So the perfection of wisdom is the antidote to the self-grasping, and bodhicitta, or great compassion, is the antidote to the self-centeredness. But the more you work on one, the more it shines some light on the other one. Okay, but they are different and they have different remedies. Okay. So here, the literal meaning of the name Avalokitesvara is interpreted in different ways. One is the Lord who looks down, in which the last component of the name is taken to be Ishvara, or Lord. Another interpretation, and this one I've heard more often, is the one who hears the sounds or the outcries of the world. So that translation makes more sense for the Buddha of compassion. Or another etymology is the sound that illuminates the world, in which Svara, or sound, is regarded as the final component of the name. So it depends how you interpret the Sanskrit. In any case, Avalokitesvara embodies one of the two fundamental aspects of Buddhahood, compassion. The other fundamental aspect of Buddhahood is wisdom, which is embodied in the bodhisattva Manjushri. In the context of the Heart Sutra, Avalokitesvara appears in the form of a bodhisattva on the 10th bodhisattva level. So sometimes, in some contexts, Avalokitesvara is a Buddha. Some contexts, here it's a 10th level bodhisattva. So in other contexts, just a regular bodhisattva. So there's different, different contexts, and looks different in different situations. There's two-armed Avalokitesvara, four-armed, 1,000-armed, 11-headed, many different kinds of ways that Avalokitesvara manifests. Okay. The text then reads, the great being, so the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, the great being, or Mahasattva, clearly beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom itself. This means that Avalokitesvara beheld the way to practice the profound perfection of wisdom. The next line clarifies that this way is stating that he saw that even the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. This, then, is the meaning of practicing the perfection of wisdom. Okay, so here it says, even the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. That's one way of translating it. So even, like, okay, there's all these other things, but even, the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates being our body and mind, what we hold most dear, that we focus the self on, okay? So that's one way of reading it. Sometimes it says that the 5 aggregates also are empty, when it's the same word in Tibetan. There's just, you can translate it as even, as also, as only. When you translate it as also, then it implies that not only are the 5 aggregates empty, but the self, the person who depends on the 5 aggregates is also empty. That's another way to understand it. Okay, generally speaking, there are said to be 3 principal kinds of scriptures attributed to the Buddha. So first, those words that were actually spoken by the Buddha himself. Okay, 2, those words spoken by a bodhisattva on behalf of the Buddha. And 3, those words spoken by disciples or bodhisattvas that were directly inspired by the Buddha. Okay, so in this sutra, the words actually spoken by the Buddha only come at the very end, when the Buddha says, leksho, like, well spoken. Okay, those spoken by a bodhisattva on behalf of the Buddha, and those words spoken, so that one could be Shari Putra asking the question, and then those words spoken by disciples that were directly inspired by the Buddha, so that would probably be Avalokitesvara's response. Yeah, but we'll see. Those last 2, I may have got them mixed up. We'll see. Well, this preliminary section of the Heart Sutra pertains to the context of the origin of its teaching, belongs to the second category. The main body of this text belongs to the third category, as demonstrated in the next passage. Okay. So here's the next passage. Thereupon, through the Buddha's inspiration, okay, so it's the Venerable Shari Putra spoke to the noble Avalokitesvara, so that's the one that was inspired. Okay, the Bodhisattva, the great being, and said, how should any noble son or noble daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom train? Here it has in the question, noble son or noble daughter. In our translation, I think it just says noble child, doesn't it? Yeah, child of the lineage, yeah. Okay. Okay, Shari Putra was one of the Buddha's 2 principal disciples. The other one was Moggallana. They were good friends, and they got turned on to the Dharma at the same time, and wound up becoming well, there were many disciples close to the Buddha, but the Shari Putra excelled in wisdom, and Moggallana excelled in supernormal powers. Okay. So Shari Putra was one of the Buddha's 2 principal disciples, and the one among all the Buddha's disciples to have the clearest understanding of emptiness. Here, however, Shari Putra is to be understood as being a highly realized bodhisattva, not simply a disciple of the Sravaka vehicle. Okay, so because usually Shari Putra is a disciple, aiming for arhatship, not full awakening. Here, he's seen as a bodhisattva, aiming for full awakening, and thus he's asking that question. As the text indicates, the Buddha does not actually utter this particular teaching. Rather, the Buddha remains absorbed in the meditative concentration on the varieties of phenomena called profound illumination. But nonetheless, it is the Buddha's meditative concentration that inspires Avalokitesvara and Shari Putra to enter into this dialogue, which gives rise to the teaching containing the Heart Sutra. Okay? So this is a staged event, so to speak, in the sense that the Buddha's behind it. Now, why would the Buddha inspire Shari Putra to ask the question and Avalokitesvara to answer it, when the Buddha could have just given the teaching and explained the whole thing himself. Why? Well, Shari Putra, in the Pali Sutras, was the expert in wisdom. So he's asking the question here, showing that he wants to know how to go even deeper in his understanding of wisdom. Yeah. And Avalokitesvara replies, out of compassion as a 10th level bodhisattva, and then talks to Shariputra. So the Buddha figured probably that for the whole audience here, it's better that the teaching be given as a form of a Q&A of his disciples and not him, because that may inspire, if the audience can see, wow, here are two of the Buddha's main disciples, and they're discussing the perfection of wisdom. I wonder what they're thinking about and how they're approaching it. Then it may make the people in the audience listen closer, instead of thinking, well, I've heard the Buddha explain it before, and the 100,000 version, and yeah, let's listen to the synopsis given by the disciples. But it's actually the Buddha's inspiration behind the whole thing, and the Buddha's wisdom that is coming out. Okay. With the introduction of Shariputra's question, the main body of the teachings of the perfection of wisdom begins. Okay, now we read in the text that the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokitesvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, and said, "How should any noble son or noble daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom train?" This reference to noble sons or noble daughters doesn't mean royalty, okay? We're not talking about, Prince William and Kate and Queen Elizabeth. The noble, somebody used this as a translation in the early days. It means Arya, okay? And an Arya is somebody who has seen emptiness directly. So in the context of, Buddhism, these beings are special, so that's why they're called noble, okay? But I think better to use the Sanskrit word Arya. It gets us away from thinking about royalty, Okay. So noble sons are noble daughters of the lineage or of the family, which in general can be understood to mean someone who has awakened to his or her Buddha nature, the innate potential of enlightenment. So here, however, the implied reference has to do with three types of beings who realize the three different types of awakening, okay? So usually when we, as Mahayanists, when we use the word awakening, we're referring to the awakening of a Buddha, okay? But when we talk of three vehicles, the Shravaka or hearer's vehicle, Pacceka Buddha or solitary realizer vehicle, and then the Bodhisattva or Mahayana vehicle, there they each have their own awakening, okay? So they all realize the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. In terms of wisdom, what they realize is the same, yeah? But their motivation for realizing it and how they go about training the mind is different, okay? So the three types of beings. First, a Shravaka, or a hearer or listener. Second is a Pacceka Buddha, a solitary realizer. Third is a Samyak Sam Buddha, a fully awakened Buddha. Specifically, the implied reference is to someone whose spiritual inclination is towards the bodhisattva path to Buddhahood. One awakens to such an inclination through the cultivation of great compassion. Okay, so that's, yeah, they've awakened to great compassion, which acts as something that helps them create the merit and the energy and the enthusiastic perseverance to realize emptiness and clear the mind, use that realization of emptiness to counteract not only the afflictive obscurations, but also the cognitive obscurations. The afflictive obscurations prevent us from attaining, from being free of samsara and attaining arhatship. Beyond those, there's more subtle obscurations, the cognitive obscurations, and those prevent us from attaining full awakening. Okay, so these bodhisattvas aim to eliminate both of them, both sets of obscurations. So this passage in the text refers to practitioners who have deep admiration for the spiritual practices as embodied in the perfections, which we just listed, which are the key trainings for the bodhisattva, whose mind is gripped by the powerful compassion that aspires to liberate all sentient beings from suffering. So that's what bodhisattvas have their intention on. Okay? How do I complete the path to attain Buddhahood? How do I benefit sentient beings right now? Okay? So they aren't going, oh, I'm cooking lunch today, and what am I going to cook? They had that the next day and last day, and they complained about it. So, no, bodhisattvas aren't worried about that. Yeah, okay, they'll just go cook something, and everybody will deal with it. Okay. So the noble sons and noble daughters are those who have generated this compassion and awakened this desire. Yeah. The reference to the text, in the text to noble sons and noble daughters, has additional significance that modern practitioners should bear in mind. This phrase clearly indicates that as far as the efficacy of the practice of the perfection of wisdom is concerned, there is no difference based on gender. In fact, this is true as well for all key aspects of the Buddhist path. For example, let us examine the teachings on ethics in the monastic code of discipline, the Vinaya, which are so essential to the continued survival of the Dharma. Okay. Notice His Holiness is saying how the Vinaya is essential for the continued survival of the Dharma. It is said that, and this is why, it is said that where the Vinaya is embodied in the practice of the three rites, so those are Posada, Varsa, and Pravarana. Yeah, Posada is the bi-monthly or every fortnightly we do confession and restoration of our precepts. So that's one of the rite that the Buddha said is really crucial that the monastics do. The second is Varsa, or the rains retreat, where you do a 3-month retreat. And there's special conditions for that. We usually do that in the winter and call it the snows retreat. And then the third is the Pravarana, which is the ceremony at the conclusion of those 3 months, where you ask your fellow practitioners for feedback about your conduct. Okay, so there's many other rites and rituals and practices that the Buddha stated in the Vinaya that the monastic should do, but these are the three principal ones. So we do these three at the Abbey. And when a group of Sangha does these three, then it establishes a place as a central land where Buddhism is flourishing. Okay, so we felt that was very important on our little corner of Northeast Washington State to establish this area as a central land. Yeah, it changes things. And I think especially when if you've walked up towards the Buddha Hall and you've seen the deer and the Dharma wheel, and then also the Ganjira, the ornaments on the roof. You know, those are things that are found in every Tibetan temple, and also putting those up here. I mean, the Posada, Varsa, and Pravarana ceremonies are what we're doing to create a central land. But those things on the Buddha Hall are the indications of here is a place where, the Dharma thrives and where people can come to learn what the Buddha taught. Okay. So it is said in the Vinaya, as embodied in the practice of those three rites, that if those three rites are present, the teachings, the Dharma, are also present. And where those three rites are absent, the teachings also are absent. So this is stressing the importance of having the monastic community for the existence of the Dharma. That's something that I feel in the West people have not really understood so well. And instead, many people have wrong conceptions, like it's a hierarchical institution, it's patriarchal, people are denying their sexuality by remaining celibate. People have these kind of wrong ideas, or namtok, okay, proliferations. Because if you look historically, first of all, the Buddha was a monastic himself, yeah. He originated the order of monks, the order of nuns, for a purpose. And then they were the principal audience when he taught. And historically, those are the people who, because they're not so involved in worldly activities, have more time to listen to the teachings, contemplate them, meditate on them, teach others, do spiritual counseling, and so on. Yeah, so the existence of that Sangha for a society who does those functions is important for the preservation of the Dharma, because the preservation of the Dharma isn't just building buildings, it's people. Yeah, people preserve the Dharma. Yeah, and how do we preserve the Dharma? By practicing the three higher trainings: ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom, by practicing the 6 paramitas. That when we practice those, we are creating the Dharma in our own mind, okay? Which is, more important than the physical objects. But the physical objects are also important because for beings who don't have the Dharma in their mind, they need texts. We need to see images of the Buddha that inspire us, and so on. Okay? So if we carefully analyze the ethical teachings, the precepts, and the practices of monasticism, we will see that opportunities are afforded to both male and female practitioners equally. In the Vinaya, there is the tradition of full ordination for both men and women, and with regard to the actual precepts each takes, there is nothing to suggest that one set of precepts is higher or lower than the other. That's one way of seeing things. Yeah. unfortunately, historically, a lot of gender bias has crept into it because Buddhism exists in societies with ordinary sentient beings, okay? And so even the story of the origin of the monks' order was begun first. The origin of the nuns' order came later, and it from the story, it sounds almost as if Ananda had to talk the Buddha into it. But I don't think you can actually talk the Buddha into something. Yeah? The Buddha's trying to talk us into wisdom and compassion. Okay. But that's the way the story looks. Okay. And then in terms of the precepts, they say that the monks' precepts originated because there were 6 naughty monks who did things that caused, that either were unethical, naturally negative actions, or that maybe weren't unethical but were inconsiderate, and the lay people complained about their behavior. Yeah. And so the Buddha set up different sets of precepts. Yeah. So then the nuns came along, and the nuns said that there's also 6 naughty nuns. So then the nuns got some extra precepts because of those. So the nuns had to get the precepts of the monks plus the precepts originating from the naughty nuns. But the monks didn't have to get the precepts originating from the naughty nuns, okay? So some people say, well, the nuns have more, why? And then the Namtok begins. Yeah, well, nuns, women are more emotional. That's the standard thing. Yeah, they're so emotional. They're so sensitive. They fly off the handle. Yeah. Men don't feel anything. They're stoic. Yeah. That doesn't apply to most of the men I know. Yeah. I've seen men totally fall apart when their girlfriend leaves them. Totally sobbing, uncontrollably, yeah? I don't think this stereotype is very true, yeah. But it's one that society has, so we have to deal with it, okay? Yeah, because my experience is sentient beings in general are pretty emotional. And sentient beings in general fly off the handle. I think we even have a president who illustrates this perfectly. Flying off the handle, emotional, thinking the world's against him, and it's everybody else's fault. Who is the emotional one in the election? Anyway. Okay. Yeah, I'm not talking about politics. I use these examples because they're so evident to us. Okay? So the Buddha did ordain women, so there's full ordination for men and women. Okay, now listen. Inasmuch as there is no discrimination based on gender in the actual teachings, so aside from the Vinaya, all the other teachings are given equally to men and women, okay? And His Holiness is saying also the Vinaya teachings, equal for men and women. Okay. So there's no discrimination based on gender in the actual teachings. The gender biases that exist at the present time in certain Buddhist societies need to be carefully examined and possibly reconsidered. Yeah, I think with all due reverence, we can eliminate possibly. They need to be carefully examined and reconsidered. Because society is very different now than it was at the Buddhist time. The Buddhist time, women were first under the control of their fathers, then their husbands, then their sons. They had no freedom to go out. Even that, they couldn't even go shopping alone. Yeah, because if they did, they were seen as prostitutes. Yeah. So, okay. So there are clearly areas where reforms and modifications may be necessary. How about are necessary? For example, in the Tibetan monastic tradition, it is the Mula Sravasti monastic disciplinary code that is followed. According to the rules of this code, the full ordination ceremony for women can only be conducted through the gathering of both fully ordained men and fully ordained women. Now, it just so happens that the order of fully ordained women in the Tibetan tradition has become extinct. Actually, it never really existed. There may have been one or two fully ordained nuns, but it seems like there was never a community, a sangha. And to have a sangha, you have to have 4 fully ordained people together. Okay. So according to the rules of this code, so you have to have the complement of monks and the complements of nuns. Now it just so happens that the order of nuns no longer exists in the Tibetan tradition. Since the existence of fully ordained women is a requirement for ordaining additional women in this tradition, the fact that the order has become extinct effectively means that it is no longer possible for women to receive full ordination in Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. As it turns out, the order of fully ordained women has also become extinct in the Theravada tradition. It only survived in the Chinese tradition. In 1998, the order of fully ordained nuns was restored in the Theravada tradition through the assistance of nuns from the Chinese tradition. And I was there at that ordination. And there were some nuns, because the nuns in Sri Lanka had only been able to take 8 precepts until then. So there were a group of them who came and they received the bhikshuni ordination. That was given by the full complement of monks and the full complements of nuns. And Karmalekshe Somo and I were both invited to be part of the complement of nuns that gave the ordination. Okay. And so then what happened is those women went from the Theravada tradition, went back to Sri Lanka, and some of the monks who had been there ordaining them were Theravada, and did some kind of ritual to make their ordination not from the Dharmaguptaka Vinaya, which was the one that the Chinese have, and they ordained, into the Theravada, the Pali Vinaya. And then they went back to Sri Lanka. And some of the monks said, wonderful, we're so glad there's no bhikshunis. And some of the monks said, how can you take an ordination from another lineage? Aside from the fact that, as I mentioned before, the precepts are pretty much the same in all of the Vinayas. So it was restored in the Theravada. His Holiness adds here, perhaps, not just perhaps, the time has come to restore the order in Tibetan Buddhism as well by the same means. Now, His Holiness says perhaps, because although His Holiness is the spiritual head of the Tibetans, he is not a pope. He cannot make singular decisions that everybody then has to follow. So, and he does things very much based on consensus. So there's been many meetings of Tibetan monks to talk about, having an ordination, with the monks being Mula Sravasti from the Tibetan tradition, and the nuns being Dharmaguptaka from the Chinese tradition. And there's a lot of resistance, specifically amongst the Gelupas. The other three sects, their heads, also because some of their heads are not monastics, seem a little bit more approachable regarding that. But the Gelupas are really quite conservative. And His Holiness has, wanted this, but he wants everybody to come together. I mean, his idea is very expansive, and he would like the monks from the Theravada, Chinese, and Tibetan tradition to all gather together, discuss this, and then together come up with a resolution that in all of their traditions, if there's no Bhikshuni lineage, they will now adapt it, and that way it would be acceptable, broadly in all of these societies. So that is the ultimate way to do it, the best way to do it. Of course, getting monks from 3 different traditions who don't speak the same language, who have had very little contact with each other together, to come to a conclusion about a controversial topic like women, it's not going to happen immediately, put it that way. Okay, so the way the Theravada nuns did it is, by going and getting the ordination in the Dharmaguptaka, having it switched over to Theravada, going back, and then they started to give it. So now they give it in the Theravada countries. Not in Burma, because you can get arrested and thrown in prison for being a bhikshuni in Burma. But there's no gender discrimination, according to Vinaya. They're giving it, and there are now Theravada bhikshunis. Some are Western, they're giving it in the West, and they give it in Sri Lanka, like I said, not in Burma. In Thailand, it was given once or twice, and then the Thai government made a rule that no monks from Sri Lanka can come to Thailand for the purpose of giving bhikshuni ordination. But there's no discrimination. Yeah. Bear that in mind, no discrimination. Among the Tibetan monks, like I said, there's a resistance to it. So what we have done, several of the Western nuns, is we have gone to Taiwan to receive the ordination. So that's what I did, my Karma Lekshe Somo, Jompa Sedran, there's several others. And then we took the ordination, and so coming back here to the Abbey, then with the help of some of our Chinese bhikshuni friends, then we have given the ordination for the novice ordination and the training ordination, and then the nuns go to Taiwan to receive the full ordination there, and then they come back here. And our aim at the Abbey, one of our aims, is to be able to give the full ordination for men and women here in English, where you actually understand what's going on. Yeah? So that's what we're aiming for. Yeah. Right now we have enough nuns with the seniority to do that. We're a little short on monks, so we always have our hair clippers ready. Yeah. But there, as you can see, there are some brave men. Yeah? Are you brave? Yeah? Yeah, you brave? Yeah? To actually train here, my goodness, and be bossed around by the nuns. Oh, can you imagine anything worse? Yeah? Trump does not like that. You know, Trump masculinity. I mean, this is what his whole thing and J.D. Vance are going, Vance. Yes, J.D. Vance are about is like, let's return women to the home, to their purpose of having babies and raising babies. And if you don't do that, if you're over 50, you're useless unless you take care of kids. And if you're younger, you are a childish cat lady. So let's hear it for childish cat ladies. We have a lot of them here. Childless. Oh yeah, child. Okay. Well, let's hope. Let's hope we're not also childish. Okay. Childless cat ladies. Okay. Yeah. And we have some childless cat men also. Yeah? Yeah, you better be childless. Yeah. Okay. So now talking about Buddha nature. Earlier, we noted that the expression noble son or noble daughter refers to an individual who has awakened to his or her Buddha nature, the innate potential for awakening. It should be noted that the word nature or gotra is used differently in Mahayana and non-Mahayana texts. In the non-Mahayana text, gotra can refer to the inclinations that are conducive to spiritual practice, such as having modest desires and the capacity for contentment. Okay. In Mahayana texts, on the other hand, gotra, or nature, is used to refer to one's true nature, also called one's Buddha nature, and that's referring to the emptiness of the mind. So those of you who have heard when we went through in volume 3, the section on Buddha nature, we talked about how it's seen in the non-Mahayana traditions, you know, as the capacity for having few desires, for, you know, being able to endure difficulties, for being content and satisfied. Okay, but in the Mahayana tradition, it's that word Buddha nature is referring to something else. Okay, and so here it's describing the two things. One is the nature of the mind, okay, the empty nature of the mind, and that makes it possible to attain Buddhahood because things are not inherently existent. If the mind were inherently existent, it could never change, because something that exists inherently does not depend on any other things, such as causes and conditions. Yeah. So if the mind were inherently existent, Buddhahood, Buddhahood would be impossible. But because the mind is also empty, Buddhism can be enlightenment, awakening can be attained. A second kind of Buddha nature is called transformational or evolutional Buddha nature, and this is talking about any neutral or virtuous aspect of our mind now that can be increased and developed and continued into Buddhahood. So that would be like the compassion that we have now, the wisdom that we have now, all these kind of factors that are impermanent, yeah, but we can increase and they can become the qualities of a fully awakened one. Okay. Within the Mahayana, the term Buddha nature has different shades of meaning. In the mind-only school, Chittamatra, Buddha nature refers to our fundamental, uncontaminated mind, that when untapped is said to be our naturally abiding Buddha nature. So when we're sentient beings, the emptiness of the mind is covered, it's obscured, okay? The basic nature of being free from inherent existence is same as a Buddha's basic nature of the Buddha's mind being empty of inherent existence. But our mind is obscured as sentient beings. The Buddha's mind is unobscured and perceives this emptiness directly. Okay, so Buddhahood refers to our fundamental, uncontaminated mind, that one untapped, okay, so when it begins to be purified, is said to be our naturally abiding Buddha nature. So this is in Chittamatra, okay, or Yogacarya, and you'll remember when we talked about Buddha nature, that they talk about when untapped, when obscured, okay, it's the naturally abiding Buddha nature, and when realized, when somebody begins to develop the wisdom of selflessness, then it's called the transformed Buddha nature, okay? In the Prasangika tradition, naturally abiding and transformed have a slightly different meaning. Okay, if you remember, well, the transformed, or the naturally abiding, is the emptiness of inherent existence of the mind, whereas in Chittamatra, Yogacarya, it's the emptiness of subject and object arising from different substantial latencies on the mind. That's a whole other topic with Chittamatra we're not going to get into right now. Okay, but with the Prasangika, it's the emptiness of the mind, but the transforming or evolving Buddha nature are good qualities now, or just the neutral state of the mind, the clarity and awareness of the mind that can be developed and continued in a developed stage into the state of full awakening. Okay. This naturally abiding Buddha nature is also known as natural nirvana, or natural liberation, for it exists naturally in every one of us. It is because of the presence of this natural nirvana that the pollutants obscuring its expression are said to be separable from the essential nature of the mind, making awakening possible. Okay, so the basic nature of the mind, of the conventional mind right now, is covered by anger, ignorance, attachment, jealousy, arrogance, negative karmic seeds, all that stuff, okay? When it is, as we practice the path, and especially on the higher levels of the path, when we begin to cleanse all these defilements forever from the nature of the mind, then that the mind is still empty of inherent existence. But now the mind that is empty is different. Instead of being a polluted mind, the mind is starting to become unpolluted. Okay? So we start out with natural nirvana, the emptiness of the mind, okay? Which a Buddha's mind is also empty. That's the same. But our emptiness is the emptiness of a mind with pollutants. A Buddha's emptiness of the mind is an emptiness of a mind that is free from all obscurations. So in that way, the two emptinesses are different because the minds that they are the ultimate nature of are different. Okay. Okay, it is because of the presence of this natural nirvana that the pollutants obscuring its expression are said to be separable from the mind. Okay. In the middle way school, the Madhyamaka school, Buddha nature is defined differently. That's what I just explained. Okay. Here, Buddha nature is defined in terms of emptiness, specifically the mind's emptiness of inherent existence. Because with the Chittamadra, when they talk about the selflessness of the mind, their version of natural Buddha nature, the Chittamadra selflessness is different than what the Madhyamaka say the selflessness of the mind is. Okay, so this gets into tenet systems, which is a whole other topic for future discussion. Okay. Okay, so in the Madhyamaka, this is also called the clear light nature of the mind. Yeah, that's the Buddha nature. Okay, so following the questions from Shari Putra to Avalokitesvara, there is a section in which Shari Putra's question is connected to the next answer. So when this had been said, Shari Putra had said something. The holy Avalokitesvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, spoke to the venerable Shari Putra and said, Shari Putra, any noble son or noble daughter who wishes to, I'm using this translation, who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should clearly see this way. They should see perfectly that even the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. So here Avalokitesvara is beginning the teaching. Okay? From this point on, the text presents Avalokitesvara's response to Shari Putra's question. First in a concise summary, then in greater detail. Yeah. So here the meaning of these sections, the concise and the detailed one, will be explained in terms of the explicit subject matter, which is the teaching on emptiness. So, in the different texts, they will talk about the explicit and implicit subject matters. So in the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma, when the Buddha taught the Prajnaparamita Sutras, he talked about, like in the Heart Sutra, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue. Those are all things that exist. Those are conventional objects. So those are, the subjects, but now we're looking at the emptiness of them. So the emptiness of those things is the explicit meaning of the sutra. That's the main thing, the main point that the Buddha wants to get across to people. Okay? The implicit are all those other things that are there, but they're not the main topic, like no eye, eye, ear, nose, tongue, these kinds of things. Okay? So here His Holiness is saying that this sutra is going to explain in terms of the explicit subject matter. In other words, it's going to talk about the emptiness of inherent existence of all these things. Okay? So that's the teaching on emptiness. Later, in the discussion of the Heart Sutra mantra, the meaning will be explained in terms of the implicit subject matter, which is the stages of the path associated with the wisdom of emptiness. Avalokita's concise response is that the noble sons or noble daughters should see insightfully, correctly, and repeatedly. That word is important. In other words, it's not just one flash and then whammo bango, you are a Buddha. You have to meditate repeatedly. We call it practice the Dharma, because practice implies doing it again and again and again. Yeah? So you have to be prepared for the long haul. Okay? It's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. Yeah, and so we have to be prepared for that. However, yeah, I mean, and I say this because I see people constantly come, and I just came from a teaching where many people were asking the teacher and saying, but the path is so long and it's so difficult. You know, what do? We have busy lives, we have families and jobs, and how can we become Buddhas? It's so long, it's so hard. Yeah, and one person was complaining such to me, you know, the teacher in the teachings, he complained, you know, Rinpoche was just very gracious and went on these long explanations about not being disheartened and you can do it. Whereas I, when somebody complained to me, looked at him and said, it's hard and it's difficult, so what? Yeah, because really, so what? This is the reality of the situation. So who are you going to complain to? Yeah, you're going to complain to the Buddha? Buddha, it takes so long. Can't you make the path shorter? I want to do it quickly and get it done with. The Buddha did not create the path. He did not create our samsara. The Buddha only described these things and taught from his own experience how he got out of samsara. Yeah, he didn't make it up. So he can't make it shorter and he can't make it easier. Yeah, it's like, what would be a good example? You're hungry. Yeah, and you're hungry and you don't like the sensation of hunger. Can you complain to mommy and daddy, I'm hungry. Yeah, I want some chocolate. Not I want spinach. Yeah. How many of you grew up with Popeye eating spinach? Yeah, let's hear it for Popeye. He taught us good eating habits. Yeah. Olive oil, I don't know. That's better than most oils. So that's good too. Yeah. I wonder if olive oil ever her name was Olive Oil, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I won't get into that. Yeah, better not. Okay. We complain, I'm hungry. Yeah. Can mom and dad make you unhungry? Yeah. The food can make you unhungry. Or you complain, I don't like to be hungry. Make it so I never get hungry. Can somebody make it so you never get hungry? This is a natural function of the body. Yeah? So you can complain all you want, but it's not going to change. Okay? You have to eat some food, and nobody else can eat it for you. Yeah, you might say, well, I'm a really busy person, I'm making a lot of bucks, and I'm a CEO and a CFO. I'm CFO what? I'm all these things, and I want to get it done quickly. Yeah, so I want to hire somebody to eat for me and to sleep for me, because I'm a very busy person and I will pay you at least minimum wage plus benefits. Will you eat and sleep for me? And also, by the way, go to the bathroom for me too. Yeah, I don't like having to do these things myself. Somebody else should do them for me. Yeah, who are you going to complain to about that? Well, you can complain to the world, but can anybody fix it? Yeah, I mean, I really wish sometimes other people could eat, sleep, and poop for me. Yeah. Gee, wouldn't that be, I'd have so much free time. But nobody else can. So it's the same with the Dharma practice. We have to do it. We can't hire somebody else to do it for us. Yeah? So people say, oh, but when somebody dies, we request puja and we make an offering, and they do puja for the person who died. Or, I have a problem in my life, I request the Sangha to do Tara puja to clear obstacles. So, they're remedying the problem for me. I just give them a little bit of offering, they'll do that. Actually, they're not purifying your negative karma. What's happening is they're creating their own virtuous karma, and they're dedicating the merit from that to the people who benefacted the stupa, the puja. Okay, so you can give millions of dollars. Tell this to a few of our wealthy people in this country, that they can ask for all the pujas they want, but pujas alone is not going to get them to awakening. You get the people dedicating and sending that virtuous energy towards you, but we all have to create our own virtue. The giving of an offering to the Sangha is the creation of virtue. So there, you create your own virtue by offering to the Sangha. Then the Sangha creates more virtue and dedicates that for you. But still, the creation of virtue we have to do ourselves. No easy out. Okay. Okay, so the term even, in even the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence, implies that a comprehensive list of phenomena will be included in this presentation of emptiness. Get ready. Okay, the 5 aggregates are the physical and mental constituents that combine together to form the basis of designation of an individual. Okay. Since the 5 aggregates are devoid of inherent existence, so too is the individual, the person that is designated by the combination or collection of these aggregates. Moreover, since the I, the person, the individual, is devoid of inherent existence, devoid of self, so too are all things that are designated my or mine, devoid of inherent existence. In other words, not only does the individual lack inherent existence, each and every one of the physical and mental components, that collected together are the basis that we call the person, that make up the individual, also those lack inherent existence. Okay, when we talk about the emptiness of the person, that's called the selflessness of the person. When we talk about things that are not the person, but may belong to the person, like the body, the mind, the computer, the carpet, things like this, that's called the selflessness of phenomena. Normally, the word phenomena, when we just use phenomena, it means everything that exists. So it would include the person. But when we make the term selflessness of phenomena, there it refers only to the aggregates and things that the person, other phenomena that are not the person. And then we also have the selflessness of person. So the person themselves lack inherent existence. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, in other words, we did all of that. When viewed in this way, all composite phenomena. Instead of composite, I prefer the word conditioned. Yeah, because it's phenomena that are conditioned, you know. It can be also composite, where composite means a collection of different factors. Yeah, but when we're talking about impermanent phenomena, then it's better to use the word conditioned rather than composite. Okay? All composite or conditioned phenomena are found to be devoid of inherent existence. Since all composite phenomena are empty of inherent existence, all non-composite phenomena are empty of inherent existence as well. Furthermore, just as the sentient beings who are caught in samsara existence are devoid of inherent existence, so too are all the Buddhas devoid of inherent existence. So this is important. It's not that the Buddhas, now you purify your mind, you become inherently existent. Inherent existence has never existed and will never exist. It's the realization of this that we have to get. Okay. So furthermore, just as the sentient beings who are caught in samsaric existence are devoid of inherent existence, so too are all the Buddhas devoid of inherent existence. Finally, and this is the crucial point, even emptiness itself is devoid of inherent existence. So even emptiness lacks inherent existence. Okay? As we go through the process of negation, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, all these negations, it may seem that we are in danger of arriving at the specious conclusion that nothing exists whatsoever. Because look, literally it says, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Okay, well, Buddha just said none of those things exist. So nothing exists. So if nothing exists, and it's all just dreams in my head, then I can do whatever I want, because I'm not hurting any living beings. Wrong. Okay, living beings exist. Things exist. They just don't inherently exist. So the Buddha is not negating all existence whatsoever. He's only negating a type of existence that has never existed and will never exist, but that we, in our ignorance, think exists and hold on to, and we even see things in terms of being inherently existent. Yeah, so the ignorance is so deep that we don't even recognize that our whole way of apprehending things, even by our sense consciousnesses, is wrong, is incorrect. Okay, because whatever we see things exist the way we see them, don't we? Yeah. You look, if there's somebody you don't like, yeah, well, that person from their own side is awful, despicable. It has nothing to do with my mind. That person is like that from their own side. Really? If they were like that from their own side, how come other people love them and think they're wonderful? It shows that our opinions can be challenged, and that our opinions are often projections of our own mind. Yeah, so a lot of these things, we project good, bad, this and that on things, and then we think that it's coming from the side of the object. Okay, chocolate is inherently delicious. Okay, if it were, everybody would like chocolate. But some people don't like chocolate. Well, that shows how stupid they are. Okay. Now, when I say chocolate, I'm talking about anything you happen to be attached to. Okay. So it doesn't mean just literally chocolate. It's any object of attachment. It could be your sex, it could be money, it could be your job, it could be whatever. Coffee. Yes, you see what suffering we have at the Abbey? Yeah, because coffee is, she thinks coffee is inherently delicious and inherently wakes you up in the morning. I cannot stand coffee. Yeah, and I think it's bad for you. Yeah, so that just shows that she's wrong because I'm right. Yeah, right? Yeah, I'm glad we got that cleared up finally. Yeah, but this is the way it is in the world, isn't it? You know, we think our projections are reality. So what I've just given are some of examples of our gross kind of projections. Yeah, but a subtler kind of projection is we see everything as having its own nature that makes it that. Something that they say is self-instituting. It continues itself by its own power, not by the force of causes and conditions. Yeah. So when we look at something, clock, right? Everybody agree this is a clock? Yeah? It's a clock. Every idiot who walks in this room knows it's a clock, right? Why? Because it's a clock. You know, there is something in it that makes it a clock. And that's what we see when we walk in the room. Yeah, there's nothing in it that makes it a giraffe. Yeah, but there is something in it that makes it a clock. Because you walk in this room and you see clock. And you don't go through some conceptual thing of, is this a giraffe? No. Is it an elephant? No. Is it, a book? No. You don't go through all of that. You just know this is a clock. Why? Because from its own side, it is radiating the nature of being a clock. Okay, I'm glad we all agree on something. Finally. Now, if you only can agree that coffee tastes terrible and isn't good for you, then we're going towards a perfect world. And if everybody could agree with my political opinions, then everybody would be on the right track, right? Yeah? Yeah, see? Yeah, I told you. But that's the problem. Nobody listens to me. Okay, but if we ask, there's a real clock here. What is the real clock? It should be inside of this, because after all, this is projecting clock nature. But if we take the clock apart, which I won't do, because I don't know how, would we find a clock? We would find some hard plastic, we would find some batteries, we would find wires, we would find this screen. Are any of those the clock? When we analyze this thing to find out what it really is, what the word clock really refers to, what the clockness nature is, we can't come up with something. Okay, and clearly this clock is not separate from the parts of the clock, is it? You can't have the parts of the clock just here and the clock over there. Yeah. And plus, the parts of the clock have to be arranged in a particular position. Yeah. If you gave me the parts of the clock, yeah, I put them together in a pile. Is that going to be a clock? No, it's a mess. Okay. Okay, so as we go through this process of negation, it may seem that we are in danger of arriving at the specious conclusion that nothing exists. But if we understand the meaning of emptiness correctly, we will see that this is not what is meant. Okay, in other words, we can't find the clock when we examine all the parts of the clock or even the collection of the parts. But there's still a clock, isn't there? Nobody would say there's no clock. And it tells time. It's 11:53. Oh, that clock says 11:52. Which one's right? This correct meaning of emptiness is extremely subtle, and therefore it has been a source of disagreement among different Buddhist schools since forever. While all Buddhist schools reject any notion of Atman, or inherent self or soul, some accept Anatman, no self, only in relation to to individual persons, but not in relation to other phenomena, like the body and mind. Among the schools that do apply the notion of no self to other phenomena, there are also different interpretations as well. Some apply no self to phenomena selectively, while others apply it uniformly to all phenomena. Then, among those that apply the notion uniformly to all phenomena, some deny inherent existence even on a conventional level, while others adhere to certain conventional notions of inherent reality. Okay, so that's why you get so many different Buddhist tenet systems. That's why we study them all, yeah, because our mind is prone to having these same misunderstandings. Yeah. Predictably, intense disagreement arose about these different perspectives, some of which will be touched upon later. The main point that needs to be emphasized here is that Avalokitesvara is telling Shari Putra that that viewing the five aggregates as empty of inherent existence is not the same as asserting that they are non-existent. Okay, so in the inherent existence that we are negating is a type of existence. We can negate that, but can keep regular conventional existence. Okay. Should we do 2 more paragraphs? Oh, one person says yes. 2 people. A few are looking like. Okay. So now His Holiness is going to talk about ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah, because we always talk about when we just say bodhicitta, bodhicitta, we're meaning the aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings. But when we look at bodhicitta in a different way, there's 2 bodhicittas, conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Conventional bodhicitta is that one aspiring for full awakening to benefit all beings. Ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is what His Holiness can talk about for 2 paragraphs. Let us return for a moment to the beginning of the discourse, where the Buddha enters into the meditative absorption called profound illumination. And Avalokitesvara beholds the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom. In general, the expression profound illumination refers to the bodhisattva deeds, which are encompassed in the practice of the 6 perfections. Here, however, that expression, profound illumination, refers particularly to the perfection of wisdom. Now, what do we keep hearing here? Certain words in one context mean this, but the same words in another context have different meanings, or even multiple meanings, one of them being the first one we learned, but now other ones. So beware when you study Buddhism to always, when you're looking at terminology, try and figure out what each word means. Yeah. Okay. So what the text means by perfection of wisdom is a direct, unmediated realization of emptiness that is also called ultimate bodhicitta. So it is not the direct realization of emptiness alone. Rather, it is the direct realization united with bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain the state of highest awakening in order to liberate all sentient beings. Okay? So what it's getting at here is, in one way, perfection of wisdom means the wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay? But here, a perfection of wisdom, is something only the Arya Bodhisattvas have, because it is this direct realization of wisdom that is supported by the conventional bodhicitta, supported by the aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay, are you with me? Yeah. So you have that aspiration, and then that motivates you to realize the ultimate nature and generate ultimate bodhicitta. Those of you who when we talked in the refuge section earlier in volume 4, and we talked about Chandakirti's commentary on Dinaga's proof of the Buddha being a valid, what? What? Didn't I say Dharmakirti? Oh, sorry, Dharmakirti. I just confused my Kirtis. Yeah. Kirti means renowned. Yeah, so they're both renowned. So you'll remember when we went through that proof, that because the Buddha was a compassionate being, and that was before he became a Buddha, then it motivated him to become the teacher, in other words, the person who realized emptiness directly. Okay, so do you remember that when we went through that? Okay, so that's what it's referring to here. Then it becomes the perfection of wisdom. This union of wisdom, or prajna, and method, or top in Tibetan, constitutes the first bhumi, the first level or ground of bodhisattva attainment. So those of you who've studied paths and grounds, this is the path of seeing the first bhumi that he's referring to. That's when you have the real perfection of wisdom. The importance of this altruistic aspiration cannot be overstated. Bodhicitta is not only important as a motivating factor at the beginning of the practice, it is also important as a complementary and reinforcing factor during every stage of the practice. So when you enter this building, when you walk in, there's some verses on the wall attributed to another Kirti, Chandra Kirti, yeah? And there it's talking about how bodhicitta is is necessary at the beginning of the path. It's like the water that keeps us going in the middle of the path, and it's like the final harvest of the qualities and realizations that we get. Okay? So, are you seeing connection? I'm trying to point these things out so you see the connections between what one author in one text has written and what is mentioned in another text. Okay? So, yeah. So the importance, the bodhicitta aspiration is twofold, comprised both of the desire to help others and the desire to becoming awakened, so that one's aspiration will be supremely effective. So bodhicitta is not just compassion. It's based on compassion. And based on that compassion, then you want to act to do something to benefit others. And based on that wish to do something, you realize that, hey, you know, the person I am now is very limited. I need to get rid of my limitations, develop my good qualities, become a fully awakened Buddha, because then I'll be able to really benefit others very naturally and spontaneously and you know, without any impediment. Okay? So sometimes the word bodhisattva is kind of thrown around a little bit. Oh, somebody, you did the dishes for me. What a bodhisattva. Well, that doesn't exactly make you a bodhisattva. That's a nice way to compliment somebody. But it's only if they had the bodhicitta inspiration, you know, to do the dishes for the benefit of all sentient beings, to become a Buddha, you know, then maybe, you know, but it's not just being a nice person. Of course, we have to start somewhere, yeah. So that's why we start with not being a jerk, you know, and keeping good ethical conduct, and then we slowly become a nice person. And then based on that, then, you know, we go forward on the path. Okay, so I know you are all starving, but enduring the suffering of hunger and complaining to me about why are you talking so long when I'm hungry? I didn't get to have a snack today. Well, I know you had one before the teaching started. You know, yeah. Okay, we will stop. Okay.